We used to celebrate the dealer because the dealer lived that luxurious lifestyle. They had the fancy cars, jewelry, perhaps the women, the big home, nice fashion. You didn't celebrate the addict, the user, the person who was strung out and begging and missing teeth and looked about 85 years old when they were only 25. Like, you didn't celebrate that. Something changed. We celebrate unusual behavior this day and age. You know, the drug addict, the abuser, the sex worker, this, that. And that's not saying that everyone should be holier than thou. We know that's impossible. But I'm watching yet another podcast, this time featuring Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady, titled Cousins. I mean, the podcast game is oversaturated. And if you think otherwise, I have about 100 bridges to sell you. But Lamar Odom, former NBA player, was recently featured on their podcast. You know, I don't know, maybe I'm old school, but it just seems to me that Lamar Odom is celebrated more than ridiculed. Now, as someone who grew up in New York City and heard about Lamar Odom when I was a teenager and we're only a couple years apart, there were conversations back then about him being the next Magic Johnson. That's how skilled he was. You know, a big man playing point guard. He could run the floor. He had a Scottie Pippen point forward style of play. And Lamar Odom had a pretty decent NBA career. But along that timeline, he became an abuser of drugs. And it just seems like when he makes the rounds now and on certain platforms, people don't take him to task. People don't question his actions. It's more like we tolerate it. And I don't know. Maybe it's me. And we know he's not the only one. There's been tons of athletes and just everyday people who have been addicts, users of whatever, and so on and so forth. But Lamar Odom gets to go on these platforms and kind of just shrug it off. I mean, we heard about the brothel situation in Nevada about maybe 10, 12 years ago where he was on a cocaine binge and everything else. I don't know what else was going on, but just everything else. And the man said he didn't wake up for 3 days. And I'm paraphrasing. And I'm just like, is that something to be happy about? I don't know. You just went through a divorce. Now you're having a good time. You're wilding out. You all types of women, drugs, alcohol, whatever. And you didn't wake up for 3 days. Something along those lines. And this is how I'd get paid if I'm Lamar Odom. I'd be going around the circuit. I'd be going to high schools, colleges, even some of the pro teams, talking to the young folks and telling them what not to do. Because when he goes on these platforms, it's kind of like a lot of laughter, a lot of kiki-keying going on. And, you know, I don't know. I remember Lamar Odom playing with the Clippers, him and Darius Miles and Elton Brand, and thinking, my goodness, what a trio for the next 10 years. Late 90s, early 2000s. What a trio this is going to be. I'm not thinking that this guy has all these demons behind the scenes. And again, he's not the only one, so I'm not really just targeting him, but it just seems like there's no shame anymore. You know, I'd be embarrassed to know that I had all this talent and I just spent millions on drugs. Like, I understand maybe the fascination with women, all types of women are coming at you that you've never seen before, you know, but why would I want to just destroy myself? That means you don't love yourself. And it just saddens me to know that we're in an age now where these things are celebrated. I remember when Kurt Cobain, early 90s, might have been 94-ish or whatever it was, when his situation occurred, former lead guitarist, singer for Nirvana. That kind of shook everyone up. Even if you didn't listen to rock, the story was just like, whoa, like this dude was so far out there with his addictions and he was just on the cusp of stardom. I mean, Nirvana was already doing its thing, but it was like they were really about to take off. And then that news hit. And we've heard other stories of entertainers, athletes taking themselves, you know, Lynn Byers back in the 80s. There's been plenty of others. But I remember when you would hear that, it was like, all right, this is what I can't do. I can't get myself involved in this lifestyle because then I'm going to end up like that. And it's not worth it. Nowadays, we have situations where athletes and others are kind of like celebrating that they were functional addicts. You have players saying how they were high during games or drinking beer during games or doing this. What? I get it. Athletes are regular people like you and I. I totally understand that. But they're put on this pedestal and they're making tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. And these are the stories that we're getting now. You know, it was a secret 30 years ago. We didn't know this stuff. We watched our athletes and, you know, every now and then you get a Lawrence Taylor story or somebody with a DUI. Okay. All right. They were like the select few. But now it seems like everyone's coming out the woodwork now and just telling you, hey, I used to do this during the games and I used to do this when I performed. And it's just tarnishing everything for a person like me. And maybe I'm guilty for worshiping athletes as a child. Sue me. Most kids do. Because we don't know any better. Even if you have both parents, it's hard for a child not to want to emulate their favorite entertainers and athletes. So, I mean, what do you do when 30 years later you hear one of your favorite players was sticking needles in his ass, you know, injecting himself with steroids? Is that a crime? No. It made for great baseball. But at the same token, it's like, oh, man, you want to hear stories from athletes who really were on their grind from childhood through their teen years and cracked it into the pros and did things the right way and then retired and didn't blow their money. Where's that athlete? Where's that athlete who played it straight and narrow all through his career, made his fortunes, and was able to establish himself even after retirement? Because if it's not about drug abuse or domestic violence, this, that, and the third, it's about somebody blowing money. I mean, I'm tired of it. I really am. And I'm going to reiterate, this is not just about Lamar Odom. It's about Lamar Odom and others who have the same old song. Spending money recklessly with no direction. Finding themselves in uncompromising positions. Putting themselves in situations they don't have to. And I know what people are going to say. Oh, well, you don't know the pressures that come with having all this kind of money. You figure it out. This is something that you either have or you don't within. You don't have to succumb to pressures. You don't. When you're an athlete, you don't have to fit in anymore. You are the standard amongst your circle. You don't have to dumb yourself down. There's people out here trying to be like you. So if you're out here just living recklessly, oh, he's one of us. When you guys want to be us so bad, well, then don't play sports. Don't entertain. Work a 9 to 5. Go to happy hour like some of us do. Run errands on Saturdays like most of us do. And try to rest up on Sundays so you're good from Monday through Friday. If you want to be like the average Joe, the average Jane, don't become entertainers. Don't live these lavish lifestyles and become addicts and then try to fit in with us. It doesn't make sense. But in conclusion, I am happy to see guys like Lamar Odom and others still alive to share their stories in hopes that the youth and others don't follow them. I mean, because the stories are tragic. There's no laughter when I watch this stuff. I know it makes for good conversation and makes people feel cool about themselves, but I don't want to hear the same old stories about athletes and others blowing money on drugs, alcohol, women. It's boring. And you can't tune it out because it's celebrated everywhere. I don't want to blow 20 stacks at a strip club. Why? I can have those women if I'm an athlete. I don't have to blow the money. I can just pick them out. You get a high caliber escort, get the girlfriend experience if you're an athlete, and that's that. I don't want to pay somebody else's mortgage at a strip club. It's a flex, I guess, to just be able to carry stacks of money and just toss it in the air. But that's a lifestyle I didn't understand, and it's not for me to understand. I'm cut from a different cloth. But I'm glad to see guys are around to share their stories. Again, it makes for good entertainment, but it's sad at the same token.